Today I'm just going to be doing a brief lesson on tolerance in the classroom, and particularly the importance of tolerating tics and obsessive compulsive or Tourette syndrome type behaviors in the classroom. And basically what happens in particular with Tourette syndrome is a student will have a certain tic. So for example, they might go like this. It's all like throughout the class, and things like this can be used to demonize a student. But actually, if you go and point out that the student is, and you attack the student, or you actually stress the student more, you make him anxious, you make him feel like separated from the class, that actually makes the tics worse and can lead to more disruptive behavior. So now it's a really, really tricky situation, of course, because we all understand that we don't want to end up disrupting the rest of the class and reducing the outcomes for the majority, for the 20 students, to try to include the one student. So the way that it is recommended to address this situation is to actually make sure that the whole class gets on board. Get the class to agree as a whole. How to actually realize and to tolerate the differences in the student with Tourette's and understand that it's not their choice. There's a couple of key points which are recommended from the research, which are the students need to understand tics are not intentional. It's not the student wants to be disruptive, or they're not trying to get attention. That's number one. Number two, it's not the student's fault or the fault of the parents. Number three, the tics shouldn't be taken as a personal attack, so it's not the student trying to attack you as a teacher or trying to attack the other students. Number four, they're not habits, and it's not simple, it's not something that the student can change. And five, there's no simple cure for the tics. And so instead, though, once we understand this, then we can understand, well, how can we deal with the tics? We have to learn how to deal with them. And what the research suggests, is that probably the best way, according to the research, is actually, ironically or simply, to actually ignore the tics. To teach the students that now that you understand that this individual is not doing this from their own choice, you understand why they're doing the tics. That's just something that they do. And it's kind of like background noise. If you're outside in the cicadas and you're always listening to cicadas, it gets really annoying. But if you just pretend the cicadas aren't there, eventually you get used to it and it just becomes like a background noise. So that is the best technique for dealing with Tourette's. According to the research, they say that try not to ostracize or try not to separate the student from the class if possible. But if the outbursts are becoming really extreme, sometimes you might have to remove them from the class. But the biggest thing that's recommended is don't stress the students, because the research suggests that when a student with Tourette's gets stressed, so if you put them in a stressful situation, maybe you call them out to answer a question, that significantly increases their tics. For some students, listening to music or doing repetitive tasks can reduce the tics. So it really depends on the student, but trying to reduce the tics can be challenging. So the best advice is to try to ignore the tics as much as possible. But anyway, hopefully it's a really difficult one. I guess the key takeaway from what I want you to get from this lesson is to try to learn the tolerance. Once people, and it's not just for people with Tourette's or with OCD, but also there are differences in the classroom for different disorders as well. And every single student is unique and different. So I guess the main takeaway is to try to understand your student and try not to label them or try not to attack them for something that's outside of their control, and try to learn to tolerate their differences. and then also try to teach that to your students as well, and engage your students in that tolerance. Anyway, that's my lesson. Cheers.